So this is the last one of 4 dito sa lecture series na to, which would leave 3 more subjects or subtopics rather to tackle before we are officially done with the subject. Here we will be discussing Republic Acts 8291 and 11199. Both laws pertain to a little something that we call Social Security. Now, when we speak of Social Security in the Philippine context, we refer to 2 agencies, the GSIS and the SSS. As defined by Rosario Manahan in her paper, A Review of Social Insurance in the Philippines, the GSIS and the SSS provide income support to government and private sector employees and their families in times of contingencies. Like what? Like death, like old age, sickness, and disability arising from work. Now, this insurance, this income support is financed out of the contribution of members of the GSIS and the SSS, as well as their employers. So that's the gist of how these agencies do their work. Let us go to the GSIS first. The GSIS, or the Government Service Insurance System, first created by Commonwealth Act number 186 of 1936, as amended by Presidential Decree number 1146 and later on Republic Act number 8291, is mandated to provide and administer the following Social Security benefits for government employees: compulsory and optional life insurance, retirement benefits, unemployment insurance, disability benefits for contingencies related to work, and death benefits. The GSIS covers all government workers. Kahit na ano pa man ang employment status nila. Basta government employee, GSIS yan. Except employees with separate retirement schemes under special laws. Kagaya ng members ng judiciary and constitutional commissions like the COMELEC, the Commission on Audit, and the Civil Service Commission. Next would be contractual employees who have no employer-employee relationship with the agencies kung saan sila nagtatrabaho. Yung mga tinatawag natin mga job order employees o mga JO. Makikita ninyo sa mga employment contract nila, merong clause doon na there is no employer-employee relationship. Like for example, a job order worker with the Department of Trade and Industry. For example lang, nakalagay na the Department of Trade and Industry is not the employer of this job order employee. So kung merong ganun, if they have no employer-employee relationship, they are not covered by GSIS. And finally, our personnel in uniform, members of the AFP, of the PNP, including the BJMP, Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, and BFP, or the Bureau of Fire Protection. Now, what is the rate of contribution? As mentioned earlier, GSIS members pitch their contributions as well as their employers, so the government agencies employing them. Naglalapag sila ng contributions sa GSIS, and that fuels the social security benefits issued by the agency, issued by the GSIS. So what is the rate of contribution? 9% for the member's share or the employee's share. And then 12%, which should be the government's share or the employer's share. Ngayon, itong 9% na to, itong 12% na to, the actual amount varies based on the actual monthly salary of the member or employee concerned. Now, what about the SSS? The Social Security System was created by virtue of Republic Act number 1161, which was later on amended by Republic Act numbers 8282 and more recently 11199. The SSS is also a state-run social insurance program. Now, unlike the GSIS, which caters to workers in the public sector, the SSS caters to workers in the private, professional, and informal sectors. Now, SSS covers all employees, self-employed persons, non-working spouses, and OFWs up to age 60 with an existing SSS number. These employees can pay their SSS contribution to begin or to continue their coverage. Now, how about unemployed persons? Can they also be members of the SSS? It depends, all right? Unemployed persons can pay as what we call voluntary members, provided that they were previously covered by the SSS back when they were still working, back when they were previously covered as employees, etc., with at least 1 month posted contribution. So, kung ngayon wala kang trabaho, pwede ka bang mag-member ng SSS? The answer would be no. But if you were employed before and during that period of time you applied for membership sa SSS and you were able to post a contribution of at least 1 month, tas later on nawalan ka ng trabaho, you can continue your SSS coverage, but this time as a voluntary member. Now, the contribution rate in SSS depends on 2 factors. First would be the membership type, and second would be what we call the MSC. By membership type, we refer to the nature of the employment of the member concerned. So employees, generic employees basically, kasambahays, certain OFWs, they have their contributions deducted from their monthly salary. So bago bumaba sa kanila yung net income nila, nadedukta na ni employer nung SSS contribs. And now after deduction, the employer remits the same to the SSS along with the employer's share in the contribution. All right. Now, on the other hand, voluntary members, they have to pay by themselves kasi they have no employers who will remit the contribution. So they have to do everything by themselves. They pay. Sila na bahala sa lahat. Now, what about MSC? Anong ibig sabihin nito? MSC refers to what we call monthly salary credit, defined as the compensation base for contributions and benefits. Now, how does it work? The higher your monthly earnings, the higher your MSC would be. The higher your MSC is, the higher your contribution will be. So let us show it, no? Paano ba nakakaapekto sa taas o baba ng contribution ang MSC ng isang SSS member? You are seeing in your screen a table showing the SSS contribution schedule for regular employers and employees effective January last year. Makikita natin dito yung rate ng employer's share, which is 8.5%, and 4.5% for the employee's share. Makikita natin dito sa table na to yung range of compensation na kung saan depende sa kung gaano kataas o kababa yung sweldo ng isang regular employee, nag-iiba din yung monthly salary credit, which ultimately would affect the amount of contribution that the employee needs to remit to the SSS as well as the employer. Kasi di ba kapag regular employee, it is the employer which does the remitting. Bababa sa employee na na-deduct na yung pambayad sa SSS. That's how it works. Now, for employed members, the minimum MSC would be 3,000 pesos with a total contribution of 400 pesos. The maximum MSC would be 25,000 pesos with a total contribution of 3,280 pesos. Now, what about unemployed members? voluntary members, pati yung mga non-working spouses. The minimum and maximum total monthly contributions are 400 pesos and 3,280 pesos respectively. For household employers and household service workers, bale mga kasambahay at mga nag-e-empleyo ng kasambahay, the minimum and maximum total monthly contributions are at the very least 140 pesos. At most, 3,280 pesos. Now for OFWs, for sea-based and land-based OFWs in countries with bilateral labor agreements with the Philippines. Now, a bilateral labor agreement is something that a country enters into with another country, basically laying down the rights of their overseas employees, overseas workers, and implementing measures with which to protect the rights of these persons. So the Philippines has bilateral labor agreements with different countries, in particular South Korea and Indonesia. So sabihin natin, the OFW concerned is a land-based OFW working in South Korea. Magkano ang minimum total contribution na posible, magkano yung pinakamataas buwan-buwan? The minimum would be 970 pesos. The maximum would be 2,430 pesos. What about those sea-based and land-based OFWs in countries without bilateral labor agreements with the Philippines? As you can see, let us compare a bit. The total contributions, both minimum and maximum, are noticeably lower. The minimum total contribution in this instance would be 960 pesos, while the maximum contribution is 2,400 pesos a month. No? So, as you can see, noticeable ang change. Hindi naman masyadong nakakataga talaga sa sweldo yung remittance. No? Kaya naman ng ating mga members, though of course, mas mataas ang rates ngayon kaysa noong dati. The most recent amendment to the law is relatively new. Sa katunayan nga, yung pinakabago na matrices with which we can determine how much would a particular employee class would have to contribute for their continued membership in the SSS and in order for them to benefit from their contributions. Mas malaki talaga siya kaysa dati. But, you know, one could argue that it's for the best considering what these contributions cover. Like any other insurance contract, honestly, Social Security helps employees both from the public sector and the private sector. Nakakatulong ito sa kanila to prepare for bad things, no? So that they would not be caught off guard when somebody gets sick, somebody meets an accident, kailangan ng biglaang expense, pwede kang humugot sa SSS o sa GSIS. Now, no, to end this lecture series, you would see that parang ang dami naman ng kailangang gawin, ang dami naman ng dapat kausapin, ang daming dapat i-take into consideration. Kailangan mo pang mag-remit if you have employees. Kailangan mong paghandaan na yung sweldo mo, mayroong bawas yun pag tumating na sa'yo kasi kailangang bawasan para sa SSS contributions mo or para sa GSIS contributions mo. It would affect your budgeting if you're an employee. If you're an employee, you have to remember your rights. You need to know na if you work beyond the maximum of 8 hours a day, you need to be entitled to overtime pay. If you were directed to go to work on a holiday, meron ding karampatang mas mataas na sweldo yun para sa'yo. If you're an employer, you have to be mindful of the fact that you have to accord your employees these rights because these are constitutionally guaranteed. Hindi lang ito basta-basta nasa simpleng batas lang, kundi ang mismong saligang batas ang nagsasabi na dapat ito para sa mga empleyado. But the good thing is that if you need to apply for any certification, if you need to apply for any document from or permit from the government endeavors to make things easier for you. Now, sabihin natin, oh, pandemya, hindi ka makalabas ng bahay. You need to be able to accomplish a particular contract. You need to, you need to communicate with fellow business people. You need to sign something. Kaso ang problema, wala kang mapagprintan. You are inside, just within the confines of your home. Sabihin natin you came down with COVID. You really cannot go out. And in order to minimize exposure, you were constrained to do everything purely electronically, paperless. In that event, you can rest assured that you can still do things properly. The law provides for certain leeway for us to do things in a paperless manner. At any rate, when you enter into a business endeavor or when you set out to work as an employee, you would have to grapple with the fact that you're not doing this on your own. The essence of business dealings, whether if you're in a position as part of capital or whether you're part of the labor force, you need to realize and accept the fact that it is a team effort. You have to communicate with people, whether physically or electronically. You have to deal with the government. You have to transact with government because there's only so much that you can do without the approval of the state. At any rate, the state is a friend. The state is an ally. And so are your fellow business people. So are your employees. So are your bosses. Sabi nga ng U2 sa kanta nila, sometimes you can't make it on your own. You think you've got the stuff. You're telling me and anyone you're hard enough. You don't have to put up a fight. You don't have to always be right. Sometimes you can't make it on your own. And that's that. For the next lecture series, we will be covering government procurement, data privacy, and intellectual property. And so, as the vloggers and streamers would say, see you in the next one.